Cheers, y'all. So in a lot of this work, I'm always going on about if you're not practicing, it's all BS. So let's talk about some of the ways we can practice. Here's 3 of my favorite ways. We're all busy right now, so the first way that I want to talk about practicing is just the standard compartmentalize, right? You take time out of your day, you schedule it. I know a lot of people like to schedule themselves, whether it's going to the gym or you set a time. You wake up, I'm going to practice from this time to this time. You could just set a timer and you go until it's done. That's the first way. That's usually what most people do. And that's oftentimes why I think a lot of people stop practicing stuff, is because that type of practicing makes them feel guilty if they miss it. There's always someone saying, but I want something to be accountable to. But that also makes us judge ourselves. And I feel that it also puts us in the academic state of mind to where we're always trying to compartmentalize everything. And in wellness, it's all about holistic habits and everyday thing and being able to integrate all of this stuff into your everyday life. So the wrap up for the compartmentalization is don't judge yourself if you miss a day. Just pick it up. There's always tomorrow. We always have time. Don't rush. Remember, a lot of times that people go into this, they're like, I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to work out for 5 hours a day. And remember, explosions lack stamina, and oftentimes explosions are that. They leave a lot of damage behind. So know that. Next thing, really focus on integrating what you have done. In this work, I'm always talking to people about things that are fundamentals to our health. It's really funny how we always consider our breathing when we're in a yoga environment, but then when we're at work, we don't. You're breathing all the time. Most of these things are to connect your mind, body, and spirit, your thoughts, words, and actions. And those 3 things are everywhere. So it's all about holistic integration. So know that. And also be sure to balance yourself out. So you might get a routine going, but at the same time, don't forget about stretching. And if you stretch too much, don't forget about strength training. In the academic world, one of the other traps we get into in the compartmentalization is we think this only does this job. But in art, we have to realize that anytime you can figure out ways to integrate fundamentals, you're widening your lens and your containers. I can't tell you how many times people walk into a dojo and they think that there is a right and a wrong way to not get punched in the face. And it's because at my school, we do it this way, and at this school, we do it this way. And you'll know that if you've ever gone into the academic world and then you go into the quote real world, they're always going to say, I know you learned it this way in school, but we do it like this here. And that is most of our lives. So we're learning things in order to have our fundamentals, but I've gone to places and they literally start thinking that the Indian people have invented breathing. Using the academic mind to break things down is great, but if you can't walk with it, it doesn't exist. So we're always having to put it out into the world. And also using the academic mind holds us into dogmas and traps us. You become a slave to tradition sometimes. So I warn you of that, because the traditions are great, but those were created by people that weren't afraid to create traditions. So practice, devote, give it to the greater, that's what Kung Fu means, is you're working towards a greater purpose. But let's move on to the next way, which is one of my favorites. This is in flow. When I was a kid, I remember reading about the first temples and nomadic tribes. And I remember hearing these stories of people going through the wilderness or, over mountains and treacherous terrain. And then finally they would find like an oasis and the ground would be flat. Maybe there's a couple trees, some shade, and clean water. And this was their temple. This is where they would stop and then check in. They could do their meditations, their spiritual work. They could practice their martial arts, get whatever they needed to do their laundry, cook meals, and then maybe camp out for a while. Now, as a little artist, and I'm always going to tell you guys these stories because we have to be able to use our imaginations to take the principles. I don't even know what tribes these were. I don't care. This was great advice. It could be it could have been a bunch of crazy savages. In your life now, think about all the flat places that you could go and practice. Think about all the places that are groomed lawns and parks and all this stuff. They're everywhere. So I will ask you, what is the wilderness that you're traveling through? What is the clutter, right? Usually it's something in your mind or it's your time. I took the word wilderness and I replaced it with time, because if we're looking at wilderness, most of us aren't living in wilderness anyway, so that's already out the door. But if we don't have the imagination to see what is the metaphor of the wilderness, it's all the things that might be in your way or make it hard for you to do the little things that are good for you. If you were to look at your schedule, or the wilderness that is all the things that you have to do, now where is that clearing? Where is that time that you have just a little bit of space, right? And you can do your laundry, you could meditate, you could do 10 push-ups, you could take 30 minutes and do a nice short yoga set. Or maybe you have cleared out all of your day, and so now can you do your laundry, do some push-ups, keep everything in flow of time and actually integrate and try. And this is one of my challenges to anyone that I work with, is can you put these things into your day-to-day? And what are the things that you're lacking in your days? So for example, maybe you are having a day, or your wilderness is a lot of physical work, you're a manual labor. So in your wilderness, whenever your wilderness cleans up, maybe you might want to sit down, meditate, do something, hydrate, maybe wash your clothes because you're sweaty, things like that. So again, total BS stands for total balancing sequence, and it's all BS if you don't practice. So if our lives are just crazy and full of labor and heavy lifting, then maybe we need to stretch or meditate. If our day and our wilderness is a bunch of go, 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 and maybe these are moments where we need to center or clean, right? And if our days are very sedentary, maybe in our wilderness we need to start moving. And this is where you want to go to the 5 elements of practice, right? See what your day is consisting of, and then we want to use our practice to balance that out. Okay, wrap up for the flow work. This is what I'm doing all the time. So when I'm making these videos, I'm also working out, I'm editing, I'm doing this all the time. It keeps me happy, keeps my energy up, keeps me healthy. But you have to have the discipline to balance yourself out. So when I'm making a lot of fitness videos, my flow is I'll sit down and I'll meditate for a while, or I'll stretch out, or maybe I'll just do nothing. Remember, sometimes we need to do that. If our flow is such a wilderness to where our time is so limited, maybe you just need to do nothing, and that's okay. Also know that you need to warm up, because if we're in the flow all the time, and maybe you have a sedentary desk job, or sometimes I'm editing a lot, I don't just get up and start working out. I get up and I warm up. So maybe I'll just take shorter stints on the computer, or when I'm listening to something, I'll start circling my hips or whatever. Keep in mind that whole dance like nobody's watching thing, it's a good principle, but don't do that. If you're in an office, it's not the place to just jump rope, okay? Also be mindful of your clothing. I remember one time I had a very fancy event to go to, and I was working out in the park. I met a rad martial artist. Next thing you know, we're wrestling, and the pocket's torn off my shirt, and the sleeve is ripped, and I'm kind of covered in dirt, and I had to go to a fancy event. And needless to say, met a lot of people that night, and actually made some great friends, because I was an anomaly. So remember, if you're the anomaly in the park or at work, you're going to get people talking to you. So you just want to make sure that the people around you in the environment that you're at, you might want to just do this work in practice. Always seek balance, stay out of your comfort zone, and be mindful of the before and the after. This takes discipline. If you have any questions, hit me up. The third way is sharing. And sharing is really important because we learn by teaching. So when you want to practice something and you're like, oh, what should I practice? What should I practice? Just imagine the last session that you did and find somebody that you want to train with and just teach them the simplest idea. Because that simple idea, they might ask questions, you might find out where you're stumbling, and this will kind of give you your next steps. This will maybe give you the next questions you need to ask. We can just do it over Zoom. One of my favorite ways to teach or to share is film myself, and you can send it to someone and tell them to film themselves, and then we can A/B back and forth, or learn to correct each other. We're like, hey, I'm working on sun salutes. I'm going to do a sun salute and you do a sun salute, and why don't we watch each other and correct each other? Stuff like this, because by correcting, and then once you make those corrections, you can do it yourself. So there's a lot of ways to share or a lot of ways to teach, especially in this environment. If you don't have a friend, then what I do in order to teach is I actually teach myself. So I would maybe watch something, go on YouTube and just literally search for something that you want to do. Perfect push-up, perfect sit-up. You can even do a private session with me. Whatever you need to do, or watch something and then film yourself. And then when you watch yourself, be just critical, not judgmental, because we're all getting better. So coaching isn't judgmental. They're not telling you you're a shitty person because you did a bad push-up. Imagine you wanted to do a push-up or just a form. Take 5 moves of the form and then watch them and then film yourself and then A/B them. So watch you on the phone, then watch it on YouTube and see how close they are. Start at the feet, watch the feet, see how your footwork is, right? Are your knees bent? Are you breathing, right? Things like that. And then all we're trying to do is every time we watch it, we want one thing. Just come up with one thing to correct and then correct it. Film yourself a couple more times, see if you corrected it. So this is when, if you can't teach someone or if you kind of feel awkward doing it, I oftentimes do, then this is a way we can teach ourselves. So these are some ways to practice. I hope that helps. Get in there, start doing the work. Final thoughts on the share or the teach method. Just know that anytime you're learning anything, whether it's math or whether it's kung fu, learn it as if you were going to have to teach it in an hour. This keeps us a little sharper, keeps us focusing on the details, and then whenever you do share it with somebody, you kind of learn what you retained. And then don't beat yourself up. You just go back and you go back through the details. Also, by sharing it with other people, you get to you're learning it again. So the idea behind this is call someone up or just go on the web and A/B. Figure out any way to A/B test what you're doing. This is a good way to seek the truth. And by sharing it, I built a whole career around this. So when I was on tour, I would just go around and I would share everything that I'm into. And the reason behind that is because I was in rock bands and I was touring in rock bands. And the whole thing was everywhere I was, it was a bunch of drinking and drugs, and I didn't do any of that. So I started sharing what I was into. I would go to parks at night and I would just train. And I've met some great friends still in my life. I've met them in the 90s at rock clubs at 4 o'clock in the morning after the bars closed. And I was training in a park on a college campus somewhere. So share what you're into. And also when a lot of people ask how I learned certain details of things is because we ask questions or someone will say, oh, I'm a dancer, we do it this way. And you're just going to learn and you're going to grow. So just make sure that you're not beating yourself up and you're focusing on the details and you're keeping it simple. Keep it simple. Focus on fundamentals, because a lot of times we bypass through getting too in our heads, or we get too esoteric or spiritual bypass. But the idea is just start at the ground and just slowly work through the fundamentals and share. And I share for selfish reasons because I'm sharing because I'm actually kind of practicing in my head. So even though I'm sharing with you, this helps me stay sharp. Stay sharp. Share. So I hope this helped, and I wish you guys happy practicing and lots of growth. And again, keep it simple. If you're not practicing, this is all BS.